I already accepted the $50,000 deposit, my mother said, throwing a wrinkled contract onto my bed at 3 in the morning. I co-signed this apartment. That makes it mine, and I'm selling it. Outside, my younger sister Lily was bent over the curb, sick and desperate for a car to disappear before sunrise. "Stop being selfish," my mother snapped. "Give me your keys." I stared at the paper, then at her. Instead of arguing, I grabbed my winter coat, the one with a spare key hidden inside the lining. "Fine," I said quietly. "Take the car." She rushed out, convinced she had taken my old sedan. She had no idea she was driving away with her own brand-new $98,000 SUV, and my drunk daughter was about to get behind the wheel. The silence after my mother left felt heavier than the argument itself. The apartment door slammed somewhere down the hallway, the sound echoing through the building like something final. For a few seconds, I didn't move. I just stood in the center of my living room, staring at the empty doorway where Diane Bennett had been moments earlier, her voice still lingering in the air. "I co-signed it. That makes it mine." The words replayed again and again. Outside, rain had started falling. Thin, cold drops tapping against the windows, turning the streetlights into blurred halos. Chicago at 3 in the morning always felt suspended between worlds. Not quite night anymore. Not yet morning. I looked down at the contract crumpled in my hand. $50,000 already taken. My apartment already promised away. Decided without me. That part wasn't new. Growing up, decisions about my life were rarely mine to make. Lily needed help. Lily made mistakes. Lily deserved another chance. And somehow every solution eventually circled back to me. My time, my savings, my stability. A car engine roared to life outside. My body reacted automatically. I walked to the window and lifted the blinds just enough to see the street below. The black SUV gleamed under the street lamp, rain sliding across its polished surface. My younger sister stumbled toward it, laughing weakly, barely steady on her feet. Even from 3 floors up, I knew she wasn't sober. My mother hurried beside her, guiding her carefully, whispering reassurances. Diane always moved like a crisis manager when it came to Lily. Efficient, protective, certain she could outmaneuver consequences. They didn't notice patterns, only emergencies. The headlights flared on, bright against the wet pavement. That SUV had been my mother's newest symbol of success. Leather interior, upgraded engine, every feature she had bragged about for weeks. 3 months earlier, she had tossed the manual onto my kitchen table. "You handle this tech stuff," she said. "I don't have patience." So I had set everything up. Accounts, tracking systems, safety features, all linked to my email because she didn't want the inconvenience. Down below, Lily climbed into the driver's seat without hesitation. My hand moved toward my phone resting on the table behind me. Instinct. Years of conditioning urging me to run downstairs, stop her, fix another disaster before it could grow. I imagined shouting, warning them, saving them. That had always been my role. The responsible one, the quiet one, the person who prevented collapse. But then my eyes drifted back to the contract lying open on my bed. The paper declaring my home no longer mine because my mother decided it so. Something inside me stilled. Not anger, not revenge, just exhaustion finally turning into clarity. The SUV lurched forward, clipping a recycling bin that sent plastic bottles scattering across the street. Brake lights flashed red before the vehicle accelerated down the block, disappearing around the rain-dark corner. I counted without realizing it. 1, 2, 3. The street fell quiet again. My thumb hovered over the call button. I could still stop this. I could still be the daughter who made everything easier before morning came. But a thought surfaced. Quiet, undeniable. What if saving them was the reason nothing ever changed? I lowered the phone. For the first time in my life, I chose not to intervene. Rain tapped harder against the glass. Thunder rolled faintly somewhere over Lake Michigan. I closed the blinds and stepped back into the apartment, suddenly aware of how calm the space felt without urgency filling it. People think breaking points are loud. Mine felt almost peaceful, like a lock finally releasing after years of pressure. I sat on the edge of my bed, listening to the night breathe around me. The contract lay beside me, meaningless in a way my mother didn't yet understand. Somewhere deep down, I sensed events had already moved beyond anyone's control. Sometimes the moment that changes your life isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's the first time you stop rushing toward chaos. Outside, the rain swallowed the sounds of the city. And far in the distance, faint but unmistakable, came the heavy, dull echo of metal colliding with something solid. I didn't move. I simply sat there, realizing that for once the story was continuing without me trying to save it. The crash didn't sound the way movies pretend it does. There was no explosion, no dramatic, shattering echo rolling through the city. Just a dull, crushing impact carried faintly through rain and distance, metal folding into something that refused to move. Then silence. I sat perfectly still on the edge of my bed, listening as the night closed back around itself. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once, startled, then stopped. A car alarm wailed briefly before cutting off, leaving only the steady rhythm of rain against the windows. For years, this was the moment my phone would ring. My mother's voice sharp with panic, Lily crying, instructions flying before I even had time to think, and I would already be grabbing my coat, preparing to fix whatever disaster had unfolded. Fix it. Handle it. Make it disappear. Tonight, the phone stayed quiet. I stood slowly and walked into the kitchen. The overhead light flickered on, revealing the ordinary details of my apartment. Unopened mail, my laptop glowing faintly on the table, a mug left beside the sink from earlier that evening. Normal life untouched. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove. The small routine grounded me, something predictable in a night that no longer followed familiar rules. Outside, rain streaked down the glass, distorting the reflection staring back at me. I looked tired, older than I remembered feeling the day before, not from lack of sleep, from years of carrying responsibility that never really belonged to me. Growing up, my mother used to say I was the strong one. What she meant was that I didn't complain. Lily had always been different. Bright, charming, effortlessly forgiven. When she failed classes, teachers were unfair. When she wrecked her first car at 19, the road was dangerous. When she quit jobs without warning, bosses were unreasonable. There was always an explanation, always someone else responsible, except me. The kettle began to whistle softly. I poured hot water into a mug and wrapped my hands around it, letting warmth spread through my fingers. Then the sirens began. Distant at first, one, then another, growing louder as emergency vehicles cut through early morning traffic. Red and blue lights flickered faintly across nearby buildings, reflecting through the rain like restless ghosts. They were heading exactly where I already knew they would go. Guilt rose automatically, sharp and familiar. My hand drifted toward my phone again. I imagined tomorrow's accusation. Why didn't you warn us? Because you never listened. The answer arrived calmly this time. I walked back toward the window and lifted the blinds slightly. Far down the street, flashing lights painted the pavement in shifting color. Apartment windows lit one by one as neighbors woke to curiosity, life-observing consequences from a distance. I let the blinds fall shut again. For years, I believed endurance would eventually earn fairness, that patience would lead to balance, that if I proved dependable enough, loved enough, things would change. But standing there in the dim kitchen light, another realization settled quietly into place. Some people don't change when you save them. They only learn you will always be there to save them again. The sirens faded as vehicles moved farther away. Rain softened into a steady drizzle. I carried my mug into the living room and sat on the couch, exhaustion settling into my shoulders. Time passed strangely after that, memories surfacing without permission, birthdays spent working overtime, money loaned and never returned, apologies offered just to restore peace. Small moments forming a pattern I could finally see clearly. Near dawn, my phone buzzed softly on the table. A neighborhood alert notification lit the screen. I hesitated before opening it. Luxury SUV discovered in drainage ditch 3 miles east. Driver fled scene. Investigation ongoing. I exhaled slowly. No panic followed. No rush of adrenaline. Just confirmation. Morning light began slipping through the blinds, pale and unforgiving. The night had ended, but something else had begun. Something quieter than revenge and stronger than anger. For the first time, I wasn't preparing to repair damage. I was letting reality exist without me rearranging it. And as the city slowly woke, another thought crossed my mind, one I hadn't allowed myself before. If you've ever felt like you were the only one holding everything together, you know how strange it feels the first time you step back and realize the world keeps moving anyway. I set the phone down gently. Morning had arrived, and for once, I wasn't afraid of what it would reveal. Morning light crept slowly across the apartment, turning the gray walls pale and exposing every detail the night had softened. I hadn't slept. The hours between the crash and sunrise had passed in fragments, memories, silence, and the unfamiliar absence of urgency. Normally, mornings after one of Lily's disasters began with damage control, phone calls, excuses, plans built quickly enough to outrun consequences. Today, there was only quiet. I stood at the kitchen counter watching coffee drip into a mug while the city outside returned to routine. Commuters crossed sidewalks below, umbrellas tucked under arms now that the rain had stopped. Chicago moved forward without hesitation. My phone still displayed the neighborhood alert notification. Luxury SUV, drainage ditch, driver fled. No names attached yet, just facts waiting patiently. I carried my coffee to the desk and opened my laptop. Work emails flooded the screen immediately. Reminders, deadlines, messages asking for updates. Normally, I would have answered right away, eager to prove reliability. Instead, I ignored them. My cursor moved toward a bookmarked page I hadn't opened in months. The vehicle dashboard. When my mother bought the SUV, she treated the setup process like an inconvenience. She tossed the manual toward me while talking on the phone. "You handle it," she said. "I don't have time." So I had done what I always did, handled the details no one else wanted to think about. Registration, cloud connection, safety systems, account creation. Everything linked to my email because she didn't want notifications interrupting her day. The login screen appeared. For a moment, my fingers hovered above the keyboard. Something about opening this felt irreversible. Once I looked, there would be no pretending uncertainty later. I typed the password. The dashboard loaded instantly. A map filled the screen, a blinking marker frozen 3 miles east of my apartment. Timestamp, 3:22 a.m., exactly when the headlights disappeared into the rain. My pulse didn't race. Instead, calm spread slowly through my chest, the kind that comes when doubt begins to dissolve. I clicked another tab. Driving session archived, interior recording available. I leaned back in my chair. The SUV's interior camera had activated automatically during operation. Every movement inside the vehicle recorded and uploaded to the cloud. Every word, every decision. For years, arguments in my family followed the same pattern. Stories changed depending on who told them. Memory became flexible. Truth bent under emotion and volume. But digital records didn't negotiate. They didn't protect anyone. Sunlight stretched farther across the floor as I opened the archive. A list of recordings appeared, each labeled by time. The newest one sat at the top. 3:22 a.m. My reflection faintly overlapped the screen. Tired eyes, steady expression. Someone who looked older than she had the day before. I remembered another morning years earlier. My grandmother's necklace had disappeared overnight. I searched everywhere before finding Lily wearing it while getting ready for a party I wasn't invited to. When I confronted my mother, she didn't apologize. "She needed something nice," she said. "You understand." And I had. Understanding became my survival skill, accepting unfairness so peace could continue. Now, sitting in front of the laptop, I realized something had changed. Understanding wasn't required anymore. Proof was. Outside, sunlight broke through the clouds fully, filling the apartment with bright, honest light. The quiet felt different now. Not fragile, not tense, certain. My cursor hovered over the video file. Once I pressed play, the story my mother would try to build later wouldn't matter. The version of events would already exist, unchanged and undeniable. I inhaled slowly, because last night hadn't just been an accident. It was the first time reality had recorded itself without needing anyone's permission. And for once, the truth was waiting for me instead of the other way around. I pressed play. For a second, the screen stayed dark. Then the interior lights of the SUV flickered on, revealing leather seats and the familiar dashboard I had configured months earlier. The timestamp appeared clearly in the corner, 3:22 a.m. Lily's face dropped into view. Her hair was damp from rain, mascara smeared beneath unfocused eyes. She laughed loudly, the careless kind of laugh that only comes from believing consequences belong to someone else. "Look at me," she slurred, gripping the steering wheel, driving Mom's new beast. A glass bottle knocked against the console. Vodka. My stomach tightened, but I didn't look away. The passenger seat was empty. My mother must have stepped out moments earlier, maybe arguing, maybe reassuring her, maybe convinced she could still control what happened next. Lily fumbled with the controls, pressing buttons at random. "Why does this thing have so many settings?" she muttered, squinting at the dashboard. The engine roared louder as she shifted into drive. Rain streaked across the windshield, streetlights stretching into long golden lines. Even before the vehicle gained speed, it drifted unevenly toward the curb. She laughed again. "Rachel's probably freaking out right now," she said, using my name with amused contempt. "She always does." Hearing it felt strangely distant, like watching someone else's memory instead of my own family. For years, I had wondered if maybe I exaggerated things. Maybe I really was too serious, too cautious, too sensitive. The camera erased that doubt completely. This wasn't interpretation. This was reality. Lily lifted the bottle again and took another drink while driving. The SUV accelerated, powerful enough to magnify every mistake. She steered one-handed, correcting too sharply whenever the tires slipped on wet pavement. "Mom will fix it," she muttered. "She always fixes everything." The sentence barely finished before everything changed. A sudden swerve, headlights spinning across the frame, the sound of tires losing grip, then impact. Metal crushed inward with a violent, sickening force. The camera jolted sideways as airbags exploded into white clouds. The image shook wildly before freezing at an angle, shattered glass reflecting flashing lights somewhere outside. Static filled the speakers, then silence. The video ended. I sat perfectly still, staring at the screen long after the recording stopped. There was no triumph in what I felt, no satisfaction, only clarity, heavy and undeniable. Every version of events my mother might try to create had already been erased by a machine that simply recorded the truth. I saved the file immediately, then copied it onto an external drive, then uploaded another backup to secure cloud storage. Years of being the responsible one had taught me something important. Evidence only mattered if it couldn't disappear. Sunlight filled the apartment completely now, dust floating quietly in the air. The calmness of the room felt almost surreal compared to the violence captured moments earlier on screen. My phone buzzed. "Mom," the name flashed repeatedly. I let it ring. A message appeared seconds later. "Call me now." Another followed. "We need to get our story straight before insurance contacts us." I stared at the words. Our story, not the truth. Never the truth. I turned the phone face down on the desk. For the first time, urgency didn't pull me into motion. Instead, I stood and walked toward my bedroom closet, kneeling in front of the small fireproof safe bolted to the floor. The metal dial felt cool beneath my fingers as I turned it carefully. Left, right, left again. The lock clicked open. Inside rested a single blue folder, untouched, waiting. If the video proved what happened last night, this folder proved something far older, something my mother believed still belonged to her. I lifted it carefully, already knowing that when the two pieces came together, the story she planned to tell would collapse completely. And this time, there would be no version she could rewrite. The blue folder felt heavier than paper should. I carried it to the desk slowly, almost carefully, as if sudden movement might disturb the quiet certainty settling around me. Outside, sunlight reflected off wet pavement, the city fully awake now. Taxis moving, horns sounding faintly, people beginning ordinary days unaware that mine had already shifted in a way that couldn't be undone. I opened the folder. The first page displayed the county seal pressed firmly into the document. Official, permanent. Beneath it, clean legal text spelled out ownership details most people never bothered to read closely. My eyes went straight to the line that mattered. Owner, Rachel Bennett, sole title holder. I exhaled slowly. 6 months earlier, I had suggested refinancing the apartment when interest rates dropped. My mother barely listened. If it lowers payments, do it. Diane had said while scrolling through her phone. "Just tell me where to sign." At the bank, she arrived late, complained about parking, signed every highlighted page without reading a single paragraph, and left before the meeting finished. Details bored her. She trusted confidence more than information. She never noticed the clause requiring removal of the cosigner to qualify for the refinance. Legally, completely. Her signature sat clearly at the bottom of the quitclaim deed. Bold, rushed, unquestioning. Back then, I hadn't done it out of revenge. I had done it quietly, almost instinctively, because somewhere deep down I knew stability built on someone else's permission wasn't real stability. Last night proved that instinct right. My phone buzzed again. Incoming call, Mom. I ignored it. Instead, I arranged everything neatly. Deed copies, refinance confirmation, county records. Then I placed the flash drive containing the dash cam footage beside the paperwork. Paper and proof. Emotion didn't matter anymore. A voicemail notification appeared. After a moment's hesitation, I pressed play. "Rachel, answer your phone." My mother's voice snapped through the speaker. "The car was stolen last night. We need to agree on what happened before insurance starts asking questions." I paused the message halfway through. Agree on what happened. The phrase settled heavily in my chest. Not understand, not explain. Control. I leaned back in my chair, watching sunlight stretch slowly across the floor. A strange calm replaced the tension I expected to feel. For years, loyalty meant protecting family no matter the cost. Fixing problems proved love. Now I understood something different. Loyalty without boundaries becomes permission. My phone rang again immediately. This time I answered. Her voice arrived cold, controlled, already rehearsed. "Get downtown, Chicago Financial District, Insurance Adjuster's Office. 20 minutes. "Why?" I asked evenly. A short pause. "Because if you don't," she said quietly, "Arthur Knox will believe you disappeared with his $50,000, and you don't want that misunderstanding." The threat was precise. Fear used to work instantly. Today it barely touched me. "I'll be there," I said calmly. I ended the call before she could continue. For several seconds, I sat motionless, listening to my breathing. Normally, this was where anxiety took over. Rehearsing explanations, preparing defenses. Instead, I felt focused, prepared. I placed the documents back into the folder and slid it into my bag. The flash drive followed. The zipper closed with a soft final sound that felt symbolic. Sometimes people imagine change as dramatic. Shouting, confrontation, a breaking point everyone notices. But real change often looks quieter, like choosing not to panic, like walking toward a situation already knowing you don't need to lose this time. I stood and adjusted my blazer, catching my reflection briefly in the dark laptop screen. I looked tired, yes, but steady in a way I didn't recognize before. Somewhere along the years, I had stopped being the person reacting to chaos. I had become the person prepared for it. As I reached for my keys, one thought crossed my mind, simple but undeniable. The person who keeps records eventually stops being the one blamed. I turned off the lights and headed for the door. This time, I wasn't going downtown to fix another disaster. I was going to let the truth finish what the night had already started. The hallway outside my apartment felt strangely peaceful as I locked the door behind me. For years, leaving home meant rushing, mentally preparing for arguments before they even began. Today, my movements were slower, deliberate, as if I finally understood that nothing waiting ahead required panic. Cold Chicago air met me outside. The storm had passed, leaving the streets damp and shining beneath a pale morning sky. Traffic rolled steadily toward downtown, commuters wrapped in routine, unaware that my entire life had quietly shifted direction overnight. I reached my sedan and paused before getting in. This car had carried every version of me. Late-night drives home after overtime shifts, silent crying after family fights, long moments sitting in parking lots trying to gather enough strength to go back inside. Reliable, unremarkable mine. I started the engine. The drive toward the Chicago Financial District took 20 minutes, though it felt shorter. Buildings grew taller as I approached downtown, glass towers reflecting clouds in sharp angles designed to make people feel small before they even entered. My mother loved places like this, spaces where confidence looked like authority. I parked 3 blocks away instead of using the building garage. The walk gave me time to breathe, time to feel the steady rhythm of my steps against the sidewalk. Memories surfaced with each block. Holidays where I cooked while Lily opened gifts. Emergency calls framed as favors. Money borrowed with promises that disappeared. I realized something uncomfortable but honest. I had helped maintain the pattern. Not intentionally, but by always stepping forward when things fell apart. Every rescue confirmed their belief that consequences belonged to me. Today would be different. The lobby doors opened automatically, releasing cool, conditioned air scented faintly with coffee and polished marble. People crossed the space with quiet urgency, conversations low and professional. And there she was. Diane Bennett stood near the elevators, perfectly composed in a navy suit, hair flawless, posture confident. Only her hands betrayed tension, fingers tightening and releasing at her sides. When she saw me, her eyes scanned me quickly. No panic, no guilt. Confusion flickered across her face. She pulled me toward a corner away from passing employees. "Listen carefully," she whispered. "You borrowed the car last night. It was raining. You hit a guardrail and panicked. You'll sign the statement upstairs, and this disappears." I studied her calmly. "You want me to confess to insurance fraud?" Her expression hardened slightly. "I want you to protect your family." The words felt distant now, stripped of power. "And if I don't?" I asked. Her voice lowered. "Then Arthur Knox believes you ran off with his money. You know what kind of man he is." Fear used to live inside moments like this. Today it felt almost irrelevant, because fear only works when you believe you still owe something. "Okay," I said quietly. Relief flashed across her face. She mistook calm for surrender, the same mistake she had made my entire life. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. We stepped inside together. Mirrored walls reflected us standing side by side, mother and daughter, outwardly composed, yet moving toward completely different outcomes. Floor numbers lit one by one. 7, 8, 9. My mother adjusted her lipstick using the mirrored panel, confidence returning as she prepared for the performance waiting upstairs. She believed she understood every variable. She didn't know about the video. She didn't know about the deed. She didn't know the ending had already changed. My bag rested against my side, heavier with meaning than weight. Inside were documents capable of ending years of manipulation without a single raised voice. 10, 11, 12. The elevator slowed. As the doors began to open, my mother leaned closer and whispered, "Just follow my lead." I nodded once, not because I planned to obey, but because sometimes the easiest way to reveal the truth is to let someone believe they're still in control. And if you've ever watched a situation unfold knowing the outcome was already decided, you understand that strange calm, the moment when silence becomes stronger than argument. The doors slid open, and together we stepped into the room where everything would finally change. Room 4B felt colder than the hallway outside. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Chicago, the skyline washed in pale daylight. A long mahogany table stretched across the center of the room, perfectly polished, every chair aligned with quiet precision. The space felt less like an office and more like a place where decisions became permanent. 2 men waited inside. The first sat at the head of the table reviewing documents with practiced calm. Mid-50s, gray at the temples, eyes tired in the way of someone who had heard too many explanations that didn't match reality. A nameplate identified him as Michael Harper, Senior Claims Adjuster. Near the window stood Arthur Knox. He didn't speak when we entered. He simply watched, hands folded loosely in front of him. There was nothing loud about him, nothing dramatic, which somehow made his presence heavier. Lily sat off to the side, oversized sunglasses hiding most of her face. Her posture slumped, shoulders tight, hands clasped together. For once she looked unsure of herself. My mother guided me into a chair beside her, placing a reassuring hand on my arm. A gesture meant for the audience, not comfort. "Thank you for seeing us so quickly," Diane began smoothly, her voice warm with rehearsed concern. "It's been a very stressful situation." Harper nodded politely. "We just need clarification before proceeding with the claim." He slid a document across the table. I didn't touch it. "Because your daughter Lily is listed as an excluded driver," he continued, glancing briefly toward her. "Coverage applies only if the vehicle was taken without your consent by a covered party." His eyes lifted toward me. The room grew noticeably quieter. I felt my mother's fingers tighten slightly. A silent instruction. This was the moment she had prepared. Diane inhaled carefully, allowing emotion to soften her voice. "It breaks my heart to say this," she said, "but Rachel took the vehicle last night. I didn't realize until this morning." She turned toward me, eyes pleading and warning at the same time. "Isn't that right?" The lie hung between us. Years ago, I would have nodded automatically. Keeping peace had always mattered more than fairness. The pressure alone would have been enough. I remained silent. Harper's pen paused above his notes. My mother continued quickly, mistaking hesitation for fear. "She must have been upset," she added gently. "Family disagreements happen. She panicked after the accident." Arthur Knox shifted slightly, impatience flickering across his expression. "You assured me the property matter would be resolved today," he said calmly to my mother. "It will be," she replied quickly, "once this paperwork is signed." She pushed the affidavit toward me and placed a pen beside it. The statement was clear. Driver admitted responsibility. Vehicle taken without owner consent. Insurance fraud disguised as loyalty. I picked up the pen slowly. My mother exhaled, relief already forming. Across the room, Lily removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were red, uncertain. For a brief second, doubt crossed her face, as if she sensed the situation wasn't unfolding the way she expected. I turned the paper slightly, pretending to read. Seconds stretched. The room waited. Then I set the pen down. "I have a question," I said calmly. Harper nodded. "Go ahead. What happens if someone signs something they know isn't true?" He leaned back slightly. "Then it becomes fraud. Criminal fraud." Silence fell heavily across the table. My mother's voice sharpened under her breath. "Rachel, don't complicate this." I finally looked directly at her, at the confidence she wore like armor, at the certainty I would sacrifice myself again. And I realized something unexpected. I wasn't angry anymore, just finished. I slid my bag onto the table and unzipped it slowly. Harper watched with mild curiosity. Arthur Knox's attention sharpened immediately. My mother frowned, confusion replacing certainty. "What are you doing?" she asked quietly. I removed my tablet and placed it in the center of the table. The dark screen reflected all of us. 4 people sitting inside a story that was about to change direction. I think," I said evenly, "we should make sure everyone is working with the same version of events." My finger hovered above the screen. Then I pressed play. The sound filled the room before anyone spoke. Lily's voice burst from the tablet speakers, loud, careless, unmistakable. "Look at me, driving Mom's new beast." Every head turned toward the screen. The dashcam footage played clearly, the timestamp glowing in the corner, 3:22 a.m. Rain streaked across the windshield while the interior light revealed Lily gripping the steering wheel, laughing to herself. For a moment, no one moved. Michael Harper leaned forward slowly, professional neutrality fading from his face. Arthur Knox's posture stiffened near the window. My mother's hand slipped away from my arm as if physical contact with me had suddenly become dangerous. Lily froze. "That's not," she started, but her voice collapsed before the sentence finished. On screen, the vodka bottle struck the console with a sharp clink that echoed through the quiet office. "Rachel's probably freaking out right now," Lily slurred. "She always does." The words hung heavier than accusation. I didn't look at her. I watched Harper instead. Years of experience showed in the way his expression changed. Boredom replaced by attention, attention replaced by certainty. The SUV drifted across the lane. Lily laughed again, steering with one hand, completely unaware she was documenting her own mistake. "Mom will fix it," she muttered. "She always fixes everything." Then came the swerve. Headlights spun violently across the frame. Tires lost grip. The crash exploded through the speakers, metal crushing inward, airbags deploying, the camera jolting sideways before freezing at a crooked angle. Static. Silence. The recording ended. No one spoke for several seconds. Harper removed his glasses slowly. "Mrs. Bennett," he said evenly, Is that your daughter operating the vehicle? My mother's composure fractured instantly. It's edited, she said quickly. Videos can be manipulated. I tapped the screen, opening the metadata window. Automatically uploaded to the cloud, I said calmly. Timestamp verified by the vehicle system. Harper nodded faintly. He already understood. Lily's breathing grew louder. She pulled off her sunglasses completely, eyes wide with panic. "Mom," she whispered. Arthur Knox stepped forward, chair scraping softly behind him. "You told me the vehicle was stolen," he said quietly. "You told me she," he gestured toward me, "was responsible." My mother turned toward him, desperation replacing control. "I was trying to protect my family." "No," Knox replied. "You were protecting a lie." The atmosphere shifted instantly. What had begun as negotiation now felt unmistakably like judgment. Harper slid the unsigned affidavit aside. "This changes the claim entirely," he said. "Submitting false information under these circumstances constitutes attempted insurance fraud." My mother shook her head rapidly. "There's been a misunderstanding." "There's recorded evidence," Harper interrupted gently. Lily began crying, shoulders shaking. For the first time in her life, tears didn't redirect the situation. No one comforted her. No one softened the outcome. I felt no satisfaction watching it, only distance. Years ago, this moment would have shattered me, seeing my family unravel in front of strangers. Now it felt inevitable, like gravity finally working after being ignored too long. Arthur Knox turned back toward my mother. "And the property?" he asked coldly. "You said ownership would transfer today." Diane seized the subject instantly, desperate to regain control. "Yes," she said quickly, pointing toward me. "She has the documents. I co-signed. I own half." Every gaze shifted toward me again. I reached calmly into my bag and removed the blue folder. The room grew still as I slid it across the table. "Then you should read that," I said. Knox opened it first. His eyes scanned quickly, confusion flickering, then realization settling heavily across his face. Harper leaned closer. Lily stopped crying. My mother frowned impatiently. "Well?" Knox looked up slowly. "She isn't on the title," he said. My mother blinked. "What?" He turned the document toward her, tapping the notarized seal. "You signed a quitclaim deed 6 months ago. Full transfer of ownership." Color drained from her face. "That's impossible." I folded my hands calmly on the table. "You signed during the refinance," I said softly. "You didn't read it." The silence that followed felt heavier than the crash itself. For the first time in my life, my mother had no version of reality left to rewrite, and everyone in the room knew it. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument we had ever had. My mother stared at the document as if refusing to accept what her eyes were clearly seeing. Her fingers trembled slightly as they traced the raised county seal, searching for a mistake that didn't exist. "That's just refinancing paperwork," she said weakly. "It doesn't remove ownership." Arthur Knox didn't raise his voice. "It does," he replied calmly. "A quitclaim deed transfers all interest, completely." Michael Harper nodded once, confirming it without emotion. Diane shook her head, disbelief turning slowly into panic. "No, I would never sign something like that." "You did," I said quietly. "You just didn't read it." The words weren't cruel. They didn't need to be. For years, she relied on confidence instead of attention, assuming authority protected her from consequences. Now the details she ignored stood firmly against her. Harper closed the folder carefully and folded his hands. "So to clarify," he said, voice professional and steady, "Mrs. Bennett no longer holds legal ownership of the property connected to this financial transaction." Arthur Knox's expression hardened. "You accepted $50,000, he said slowly, "for property you don't legally own." My mother turned toward him quickly, composure cracking completely. "I was going to fix it," she insisted. "The paperwork just needed time." "That's called misrepresentation," Knox replied, "and that creates problems." Lily began crying again, louder this time. "Mom, what's happening?" she asked, voice shaking. Diane ignored her entirely. Her eyes locked onto me instead, searching, pleading, demanding rescue all at once. "Rachel," she said, voice breaking, "tell them this is a misunderstanding." For a brief moment, old instincts stirred inside me. Years of conditioning don't disappear instantly. I remembered stepping forward countless times before, smoothing over damage, absorbing blame so everything could return to normal. But normal had never been fair. "I can't do that," I said gently. Her expression shifted from panic to betrayal. "You're my daughter." "Yes," I answered calmly. "And I didn't take the car. I didn't sell a house I don't own." The words landed harder than anger ever could. Harper stood and walked toward the door, already dialing his phone. "I'm required to notify our fraud liaison," he said. "Given the evidence presented." My mother rose abruptly from her chair. "This is unnecessary. We can resolve this privately." No one responded. Control. The thing she had relied on her entire life had slipped completely away. A knock sounded moments later. 2 uniformed officers entered quietly. The atmosphere changed instantly. Conversation stopped. Even Lily's sobbing faded into stunned silence. Harper gestured toward them. "Possible insurance fraud and financial misrepresentation," he explained calmly. "Evidence has been provided." One officer nodded. "Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us while we sort this out." Diane stepped backward. "This is a mistake." The metallic click of handcuffs echoed sharply through the room. Lily gasped. "Mom!" For years, consequences had circled our family without ever landing. Watching them finally arrive felt surreal. Not dramatic, just inevitable. As they guided my mother toward the door, she turned back toward me, eyes burning with accusation. "You did this," she said. I met her gaze steadily. "No," I replied. "I just stopped fixing it." She searched my face for hesitation, for regret, for the daughter she expected to rescue her again. She didn't find her. The door closed behind them. Silence returned to the office, heavier but strangely peaceful. Arthur Knox exhaled slowly. "I suppose attorneys will handle the rest." Harper nodded sympathetically. I gathered my tablet and documents, placing them carefully back into my bag. My hands didn't shake. My breathing stayed calm. The storm had already passed. As I turned toward the exit, Harper spoke quietly. "For what it's worth," he said, "you handled that professionally." I gave a small nod. Professional wasn't the word I would have chosen. It felt more like release. Outside the building, cool air filled my lungs as I stepped onto the sidewalk. Traffic moved normally, people hurried past, and the city continued exactly as it had before. But inside me, something fundamental had changed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying my family's weight. And without it, walking felt lighter than I ever remembered. The glass doors of the building closed behind me, sealing the noise of the morning inside. For a moment, I stood on the sidewalk without moving. Chicago moved around me as if nothing unusual had happened. Taxis rolling past, office workers balancing coffee cups, conversations blending into the steady rhythm of a city that never paused for personal endings. It felt strange how the world kept going. My phone buzzed softly in my hand. A message from my attorney appeared. "Wire confirmed. Closing completed this morning. Funds transferred successfully." I read it twice. 2 weeks earlier, quietly and carefully, I had arranged the legitimate sale of my apartment. Not out of panic, but preparation. Somewhere along the way, I realized security didn't come from holding on to a place. It came from knowing you could leave when staying stopped being healthy. Now it was done. The apartment that once represented survival had finished its purpose. I began walking toward where my car was parked 3 blocks away. Each step felt steady, lighter than I expected. Behind me, inside the glass tower, lawyers and investigators would continue sorting through consequences that no longer belonged to me. My phone rang. "Mom." The name flashed across the screen again and again. I watched it vibrate until the call ended. A voicemail notification followed immediately. I didn't open it. Some conversations don't bring closure. They only reopen doors you've already chosen to walk away from. Sunlight slipped between buildings, warming the pavement as clouds finally broke apart overhead. The city looked brighter than it had that morning, as if something invisible had lifted. When I reached my sedan, I paused with my hand resting on the door. This car had witnessed every version of me. The exhausted daughter driving home after double shifts, the anxious fixer rushing toward emergencies, the person who believed love meant endurance without limits. That version of me had survived. But she didn't have to lead anymore. I got inside and started the engine. The dashboard lit softly. Without overthinking, I opened the navigation screen and typed the destination I had imagined for months, but never allowed myself to choose: Savannah, Georgia. The route appeared instantly. Long drive, new beginning. I pulled onto the highway, watching the skyline slowly shrink in the rearview mirror. Buildings gave way to open road, gray turning gradually into blue sky ahead. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. Miles passed beneath the tires. Memories surfaced. Arguments, sacrifices, moments I once believed defined my worth. But distance softened them, turning weight into lessons instead of wounds. Another notification appeared from an unknown number. I ignored it. Not everything deserved access to my future. The sun lowered slowly, painting the sky gold. I rolled down the window, letting warm air rush inside, carrying away tension I hadn't realized I still held. People often think strength looks like confrontation. Loud words, final speeches, dramatic victories. But sometimes strength looks quieter. Sometimes it looks like leaving. And if you've ever reached a moment where walking away felt terrifying, but staying felt impossible, then you understand what freedom really feels like. Because the truth is, I didn't destroy my family. I just stopped saving them. The road stretched endlessly ahead, open and unwritten, and for the first time in my life, no one else was deciding where I was allowed to go. And if stories like this remind you that choosing yourself is sometimes the hardest and healthiest decision you can make, then maybe that's why we keep listening to them, and why new beginnings often start the moment someone finally decides they deserve one. I drove forward, the city fading behind me, toward a life no one else would control again.